here. Let's talk about Rubelite a bit. Bring up the map on the screen here. You know, there's two major fixtures here across from Theta from each other. They're a little bit parallel to each other, perpendicular, I guess, to the spawn points. So teams have options to go up on either fixture. But where do you expect, I guess, these guys to go? What do you expect to see? We did see a cap strat in use by Wild Ones. A lot of that outskirt running with, you know, the Locust, getting the job done. We're seeing a lot of commandos in play, really fast mechs, getting those caps. And they can do it relatively safely. It seems like the only time it becomes an issue is when somebody's stationed nearby. So, for example here, Team 2 up in that D6 region has some view over Kappa and can control it while still dropping lerms and getting shots in on the rest of the field there. But the same thing goes for Epsilon on the other side. You know, have the mechs posted up in here, they have view over Epsilon. Epsilon, you don't have as much safety though, because a lot of this is open. It's all open. It's high, but it's exposed. And when you're considering the amount of lerms in use, not a lot of places to hide. You almost have to get all the way up to this line here.
Yeah.
In order to get into any sort of cover against lerm fire, and that's a really long travel, especially with slow mechs, to get up in there.
Yeah, I think D6 is a little bit of a better position, but we're gonna have to find out. Looks like we're going ahead and dropping now.
Absolutely, let's go take a look. There are places further back, you know, the Echo 4 area, where they can be a little bit offset and still have cover. But it's a lot further off of Theta. And one of the big key plays here with Wild Ones versus Imperial was the fight over Theta initially. It really sets the tone for the rest of the match. And Wild Ones basically securing Theta and keeping it allowed them to get that 3-2 advantage and ultimately work around for that 4 cap. And then, of course, the MVPs of that match were the light mechs, able to secure 2 points all the way to the end.
Yeah, and that's definitely interesting to me. And we saw Wild Ones do the cap strat in their first match against Eisengrim, or their second match against Eisengrim as well. And again, with the cap strat, I think you have to commit to it right off the start. You have to take the faster light mechs on your drop, and you have to be moving right away to secure that cap strat, to move the rest of your mechs to a defensible position to hold out. We do see, looks like a Locust 1E for 42, so that is one of the faster mechs available to him. I think it is the fastest mech available in the stock mode. So potentially a cap movement, but we'll have to see how they play out with the rest of their drop deck.
What I'm seeing here for 42 is a hell of a lot of pinpoint. Their Annihilator, 4 PPCs. They have the 4P with 8 medium lasers. They do have the Stalker in there, the 3F, that does have 2 LRMs, but 2 AC-10s on the Rifleman. The K2 bringing 2 PPCs, and then of course the Black Knight, which we see a lot with those 3 large lasers and 4 mediums. Not a lot of LRMs in use, but a lot of pinpoint damage. Now 42 able to get that Locust up there, get that initial cap on Theta, but he's moving away from the point. Looks like he's just gonna give it up to that Javelin. He did not stick around like we saw with Wild Ones. They stuck around and were able to keep them from recapping Theta. They got the initial, but then immediately moved off of it and headed to Epsilon. Not sure if they wanted Tolson and that commando to be able to hold it off, but that initial movement just seemed moot. They immediately flipped it back in their favor.
And right now, I mean, right now it looks like Phoenix Legion can get a full cap maybe on Theta. They don't have any ability to shoot down on that Javelin on Theta, and this is going to be not only a 3 cap, but it looks like they're going to have 3 full caps, which helps a little bit. Now they got some fire in on Theta, finally. 42 able to at least prevent it from being a full cap. But right now, map control seems to be in hand by Phoenix Legion.
Let's take a look here at Vidya Games in that Black Knight, see what kind of sightlines these guys have. So far, they've been taking a lot of hits. Not the best choice.
Yeah, I'm not sure 42 is in a great position right now. They're on this hill off to the side. They do have, you know, some cover to hide behind, but Phoenix Legion is spread out a little bit. They have a Wolfhound on the far structure that is carrying, I believe, 1 large laser, so he can at least put a little bit of harassing fire down.
Now, you got to remember, with stock mode, of course, we're not seeing a lot of ERPPCs, if any. I don't think we even have any ERPPCs in stock mode.
No, there are no ERPPCs.
So these guys are fighting at pretty extreme distances for PPCs, mainly just scratch at this point at these ranges. But we are seeing a back cap. Sigma is going to fall to the Locust. He's got to sit there for a while, though, to get that fully flipped back. Tolson backing him up a little bit close, maybe providing early warning with that commando. Just trying to warn him, but we do have a javelin coming up. I don't think Tolson saw him.
Oh, Tolson doesn't know. He takes some
does
fire
now.
in the back.
So he's trying to break off. There are 2 light mechs in tow here. Woozle Doozle and Polycat both tracking Tolson. He's getting a lot of scratch, but it's going to be a 2-on-2 light fight. And it looks like Tolson's getting some shots in with those SRMs. We'll have to see. Are they going to back off, or are they going to try and stick with this fight?
Phoenix Legion's also doing a really good job dropping some strikes, airstrikes down on the position that 42 is holding. Their Annihilator, virtually dark, down to 78% in that mech, taking a lot of damage early on.
Now they neutralized Sigma. They weren't able to get the cap though. That bought them a little bit of time. But a third mech now, the Locust, is here. This is not good at all for 42. They are overstaying their welcome, and all 3 light mechs now getting into the fight. This could spell disaster for 42.
Yeah, 42, I think, misjudged this. I don't think they realized there were 2 additional mechs involved. They're not going to be able to get out of that quickly. Not with those mechs on top of them. The speeds are basically the same.
Oh, Tolson getting hit by an arty strike. Loses a leg. He is dead meat, and Captain Salty is going to be fleeing tail between his legs. And that, as we thought, it could have been much worse, but at least they got out of there with the Locust. But Sigma goes right back to Phoenix Legion.
Realize that he is headed right towards the main body. He does get some back shots in, so it looks like maybe he's going to harass now.
Dropping a strike as
fire
well.
Away.
That Annihilator's not going anywhere very fast, so he's going to eat the full brunt of that airstrike.
It was a very efficient strike there, but still, 42 looks like maybe they're going to be a little more aggressive. They are moving up towards that structure. They are basically in a Congo line here. Annihilator, Rifleman, and Catapult. And that Annihilator is slow. You got to make sure he doesn't fall off the side of the map here.
So the Locust is going to attempt to get Kappa, but once again, full caps by Phoenix Legion. There's no way he'll be able to get it by the time the Grasshopper arrives, and I think he knew it, so he backed off. They saw that he's no longer capping Kappa, so I don't think that they're in a hurry.
Very aggressive right now, but there's a UAV up above there that's going to take some identification. That Grasshopper knows they're there now.
Here we got
and
some
they are
strikes
just
coming
forward.
in. They're getting past the strikes, though. The Annihilator's going to eat it.
Yeah, and Phoenix Legion just set up on the hill waiting for them to come. Annihilator, Awesome, and Banshee. 3 mechs waiting for them to crest here on the structure.
I think this is a good play, though, for 42. I know it's risky, but they've lost a light. They're not going to be able to outcap these guys. They need to get the kills. They're built for pinpoint accuracy. Not seeing a lot of LRMs in play here. So really getting up in there and getting the job done.
Built the same pinpoint accuracy build, but right now 42 is just basically peeking 1 mech at a time. They've got this Grasshopper behind them, getting some fire in as well.
And some more harassing fire from the Wolfhound.
Yeah, at all. They're in trouble here.
They've stagnated on this corner, and now they are getting hit from multiple directions. They got the Annihilator up there. He's getting some work done against that Hunchback, but that they are in a hole right now, and it looks like they're getting surrounded by Phoenix Legion. Based on the percents, not in favor of 42, and of course being down a mech as well. But if they can start getting some of these key kills here, they could be able to switch it back. The Annihilator about to get striked yet again. Looks like he might have dodged most of that.
Might have only taken 1 or 2 hits there from that strike, but still, just uneven poking right now.
Virtually
Get
dark.
a kill on the Awesome.
Gets a kill on the Awesome. That's big.
Very big.
They need to start racking up these kills if they want to pull this back, but they are in dire straits in the armor.
Right now, the Annihilator is basically on his own on that power position. Now the Awesome's down. They need to focus on that Annihilator, take away his Overwatch.
The lights are stalking this Rifleman. He is wide open, down to only 1 AC-10, and he's getting shot in the back. 1 more shot and he loses that other torso. He's diving off into safety, but he's going to really have to be careful. Those lights now getting aggressive in this left side. Phoenix Legion wants to wrap this up with all of these weakened mechs on the field.
And the
They're going to start getting back shots in here.
Off of his position. They didn't get him down.
I don't think the Annihilator knows he's getting shot in the back.
That's a good job by that.
The lights are getting in there, and they're starting to get these back hits, but the Annihilator just shrugging it off. Another mech dies for Phoenix
Annihilator
Legion.
down. The
This
big
pinpoint
mechs are
is starting
dying right
to
now.
add up. But 673 tickets, though, in favor of Phoenix Legion. 3 cap. They're about to drop it to a 2 cap to buy them a little bit more time. They might be able to still pull it off if they got those remaining light mechs moving, but...
And 42 has turned this around. Phoenix Legion has half of their mechs down on the field right now.
It might be too little too late, though. There is another mech moving on to try and flip Epsilon. Only 40 tickets remaining. I think that Phoenix Legion really got this in the bag.
They got it in the bag, yeah. I think if Epsilon gets flipped, this game is over. It doesn't look like 42's moving to prevent that from happening. Looks like they're going to just try and hold on Theta with their bigger mechs. I don't think they have the speed to be able to do this. Losing that light mech early on really hurt them. The Locust is still in the fight for 42. He needs to be at caps.
Yeah, I think this one is over. Like you said, nail in the head. Losing that light early on, when we emphasized how important these lights are in this match, in this current meta, and you know, especially when it comes to cap strats, we're seeing repeatedly 3 lights on the field because, of course, compared to last year, it is tonnage based. It is not based on 2222. So we're seeing more lights in play, which means more mobility, more cap capability, and of course more spotting for LRMs. And losing that light early on, it really hamstrung them on the cap, which is why we kind of knew they had to get pushing, had to clean up, and had to spread out and prevent those caps. And they did get the kills where they needed it, but I'm willing to bet Phoenix Legion, similar to Wild Ones, they were aggressive, especially with those lights coming around the back side, but I bet you they made the call saying, we're up on caps, just delay them. Don't let them get away. Throw your armor away.
Yep.
You know, spread damage as much as you can. Stay alive. Don't worry about the kills. Just delay, delay, delay. And they did, and that's how they came out with a win here.
Yeah, and really, Phoenix Legion, when 42 started moving up, they kept their assault mechs for a while out in basically a power position, out in the open, just trying to keep their heads down, slow down that push, and they did. They slowed them down in kind of a peaking fight. Ultimately, 42 was able to kind of out-peak them from that power position, take those mechs down, but it took time. It took longer and longer, and the thing, losing that light mech, and then having the Locust for 42, still kind of engaging and harassing on Phoenix Legion, I think that was the wrong decision.
Yeah, and it might have been a situation where that didn't even matter, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah,
I mean, at that point, you know, they had one foot in the grave, of course, losing that light mech. And them getting caught up in that firefight and not really moving, not getting the job done earlier when they really needed to do it. They needed to push past Theta. They needed to be able to cap Theta from relative safety to slow down the ticket bleed. They got up into that left side. And I played for 42 in MWOWC last season. And that same thing happened to us where we went up on that left side and we waited and we waited and we got struck out and didn't go when we needed to. We were waiting to ambush them. They never came. We took a ton of extra damage, and you know, I'm having a little bit of flashbacks here to what happened in that match, where it's just, you gotta go. And you know, sometimes go can get you in trouble as well, especially when they have a nice concave on you. But you know, they were looking for angles and looking for ganks, and they finally got it. They got the gank that they needed to be able to move forward, but it came so much later. They bled off so many tickets. They were down the light, so he couldn't have kept them up on that 3-2 exchange as much as they needed, and it just got away from him. I mean, a lot of early decisions here, I think, ended up costing him in the long run.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that, like you said, losing the light and that initial push, which got them into a better trading position eventually, but really slowed them down, and they never really left that position for the rest of the game, even though they were getting up on kills. It just felt like the timing was off for them, and we talked about it in the opening with this reduced mobility of stock modes. You know, drop calling is a little different than what these teams are used to after years of competitive play. This is a different pace. It's a different thing that you have to keep track of the timer. I mean, before, when you were drop calling, when you were calling, you know, caps again, when you were down on caps, you could be like, you know, there was a a set number in your head based off how many caps you had, how many caps the opposing team had, and where you were at in the points, where you said, okay, after this point, we need to turn around and focus on caps. But before that, we don't have to worry about it because we're fast enough to go and
we can clean up and
get
spread
those
out.
caps. Exactly.
So, and
But
that you
that's
know, you got to have your
now.
lights alive at the end now. You can't be marching in an annihilator to go flip caps anymore. It's not going to happen. And so preserving your lights is going to be a common theme, I think, in these semifinals. And I just had something I wanted to talk about.
There it goes.
There it goes, right out of my head. Let's go to the map, though. What we saw here is, I know that this is a very common maneuver here. They move up, and they set up kind of in this little shelf here, Echo 4 shelf. Now, that spot has been popular on Rubelite all through the last competitive season of MechWarrior Online, or MRBC, because they have really good reach and good angles. But that was with ER large lasers and ER PPCs. They don't have the range. So we saw a lot of exchanges only culminating in like 3% armor loss. So they eventually had to make their move because they were banking on their lights getting out of there. You know, they were banking on the lights coming around here, getting to Sigma. They had the early warning. Tolson set up for the early warning, was fantastic. However, this game can come down to a matter of seconds, mere moments, causing things to go one way or the other. Tolson set up here, says looks good, turns the corner to go help with Sigma. Right at that moment, the mech comes in and starts scratching them right from behind. Let's take a look at the map ban. We'll head back to the map. If Tolson waited for like 5 more seconds and saw that light mech coming, they both would have gotten out of there safely. Looks like we're heading right back to Rubelite Oasis again.
The other key thing to remember about that is the addition of the Javelin, which is basically another light mech on the field coming in there and making it a 3-on-2. So Tolson stays, he sees the other mech coming in, says it's going to be a 2-on-2. He would not have known that third mech was coming in anyway, but they might have changed their decision to stay and fight versus to get out of there if it was 2-on-1 versus 2-on-2. But ultimately becomes a 3-on-2. Tolson goes down quickly, and that just is downhill from there. Like we talked about, you really need to keep those light mechs alive. 42 unable to do that. They won the trades in the initial, but it took too long and it cost them the match.
And you know, I don't know whose strike it was, but somebody dropped an artillery strike during that scuffle.
Yes.
If that was a 42 artillery strike meant to soften them up on the retreat, that strike took Tolson's leg. And that was, I mean, he probably was going to lose it anyways. He was, just to be fair, you know, even if they got chased out, I think Tolson was in dire straits anyways, but that's got to hurt. So either that was an MVP strike coming in from Phoenix Legion, or that was a mistake by 42. Maybe he dropped the strike, they wanted to withdraw, and then I saw Tolson with that smoke on the ground. I saw him take that turn to go back in and drop another shot. I don't know if he was maybe like, you go, I'll stay here and hold them off or something like that, which ultimately is what he did. The Locust was able to get out relatively unscathed, had a really nice airstrike in on the back of that Annihilator, and was trying to do something at Kappa, but the Grasshopper was there to prevent him. But that was a pretty costly start, and I think we called that right off the bat, as that was going to be devastating for them, and it was.
Yeah, and for Tolson, you know, it's a heroic last stand sort of thing, but it would have been a lot better to get out of Dodge faster. Unfortunately, it really seemed like when both light mechs showed up on Sigma, and it was a 2v2 for like a second or two, it felt like 42 turned around and said, let's engage. There was one moment where it was 2v2, and then here comes the third mech for Phoenix Legion. That's when they said that, you know, oh shoot, we got to get out of here. It's too late at that point.
Yeah, and I mean, you're behind enemy lines. I mean, if this was behind your line and you were defending a cap, I'd say absolutely stick around and finish that fight. But they had to have known that they were overstaying their welcome and that somebody was going to come running. And if anything, a mech could potentially move to cut off their escape route. They could have sent, like, the Stalker over there or something to catch where they were going to try and retreat through, and that would have cost them even more. So, you know, it was, if they were able to catch somebody in a 2v1, like maybe they thought it was just a locust or something, and they
Yeah.
only sent one mech to handle it. Awesome, but man, if Tolson, if he kept his eyes forward for just a couple more seconds, he would have been able to get the early call, and I think they could have slipped out of there. And they didn't even get the cap. They got the neutralization, but they didn't even get the cap for it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
ultimately,
insult to
after the
injury there.
fight was done, they just flipped that cap back, and it was just a pure loss for them. So that was rough, but they're gonna have another shot at it. Obviously, teams are switched now, so we'll see the answer on the other side of the map, and we'll have to see how Phoenix Legion reacts in this new terrain as well. But I think 42 learned a lot from that one, and we'll have to see if they can, on the fly, make the decisions they need to be able to fix that. I mean, maybe this means that they're not going to take risky back caps anymore. That could cost them too, because we've seen
I was
back
about to
caps.
say you can't be too passive with your light mechs, right?
Yeah, like if you're too afraid to get the back caps done, we've seen matches decided based on lights going in and getting the job done in the back caps. So if you just decide to omit that from your playbook, you're going to get played. So they have to still take risks, but they need to do it smartly, and they need to have eyes on the field so they know where the other team is and know when it's time to leave. It's as for the pinpoint. I mean, we saw very few LRMs on the field in this case, so damage numbers were significantly different because a lot of it was center torso, a lot of it was well-placed shots, and ultimately, they were able to start shredding down mechs and started racking up the kills there. But if they had one more light mech and still were able to shred these guys down, the light mechs for Phoenix Legion, they were getting those backcores, and they were still relatively fresh right up until the end too. So that was still a threat. Even if all of the assaults and heavies fail, they still have to handle all those lights, and they still have the ability to run around and get caps.
Yep. Yeah, and I thought, again, to me, watching that match, it felt like Phoenix Legion was in control the entire time, and 42's reacting, trying to tilt the balance in their favor, and it never really felt like Phoenix Legion lost control. There was that movement up front where for a little bit you thought, the Awesome went down, they got the Banshee down, and you're like, well, maybe they're starting to do it, but it never really fell out of the hands of Phoenix Legion. Their lights were basically controlling that map, like you talked about, and ultimately, I think they would have potentially won it anyway, even if there had been another light on the field for 42. It just felt like they had the earlier map control, the advantage in tickets, and really just didn't let it slip away. I liked the reaction by Phoenix Legion's light mechs to take back control to prevent that cap, get the extra kill. And so 42, they've got to figure out a way to not lose the aggressiveness of those lights, but still, preserve them as best as they can. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Delay. Yep. Mm-hmm. That was bad. Don't do that.
Damn it, my mic was muted for that whole last section.
Oh, man.
I would never have to mute my
thank
mic if I didn't have a
goodness.
cough.
Thank goodness.
I
that
just whipped out
it
the
just
best,
hearing
like,
that.
pun right at the end there, and nobody but
No.
you got to hear the pun. You and
I-
the referee got to hear the pun. I was pretty proud of myself.
I'm going to spare our viewers and not repeat that pun. So, you're welcome, everyone.
All right, well, I'm pretty sure I was just reiterating the same points anyways, so that's okay.
But here we go. It is 1-0. Phoenix Legion with the lead. Same map. Teams are switched. If they win, they will be moving on. 42 needs to win, or they will be dropped into the losers bracket here in the semifinals.
You know, I am feeling a little bit better, though. I mean, I'm still sucking on cough drops like crazy just to try and keep from hacking my lungs out, but a lot better today than the last 2 days. So hopefully for the next set of matches, you know, maybe even later today, I'll be able to survive through an entire match without having to hit the mute button.
And we know the mute button is definitely OP right now.
Absolutely. So we're definitely seeing an awesome in-play again. 3 PPCs and a small laser. A wonderful small laser.
Doesn't look like a drop deck change for 42 here. Awesome Annihilator, Banshee, Locust, Javelin, Wolfhound, Hunchback, Grasshopper. It looks like both teams bringing the same mechs. And we've got 2 lights headed towards Theta, 1 for each team. Could be a little interesting engagement to start off here. Both Locusts.
Now, if we remember from before, 42 taking that early cap on Theta and then just abandoning it. But yes, they got that Locust right up there. He was able to stop the cap, and he's dropping a strike. I don't know if Captain Salty sees that coming. It looks like he does. He backs
Locust
off the
does
point.
Get out of there.
Smart maneuver by him, and he actually got a pretty good burn on Case Block in that Locust, but the Javelin coming up right behind. And he was able to take Theta with just a little quick step on there, was able to finish the cap, and is still at 99%. I'd call that a pretty good win for 42, but they're getting their big boys up there to try and defend it now.
And he's getting out of town. It looks like instead Phoenix Legion making a move for Epsilon. Captain Salty originally looked like maybe he was going to Epsilon, pulled off. They have not sent anyone to Kappa yet. So Kappa is still open. Phoenix Legion moving up the left side. Kappa is not going to be available to be capped in about 2 seconds right now. So they basically, 42 has conceded Kappa at this point to Phoenix Legion.
They do have somebody moving for it now, Captain Salty and that Locust. Clearly the Locust being on cap duty, but yeah, if he makes a move for that.
There's a Hunchback sitting right over there that's going to be able to fire down that hill if he makes a step onto that point. I'm not sure he realizes that.
But, you know, he does not have clear view, so by the time, since it's not capped already, he should be able to grab it and get out of there before this Hunchback is able to respond. He has a view of it, but I think he's going to be able to get clear. If he overstays his welcome, he might pay for it. If he overstays his welcome, he might end up paying for it, but looks like they're going to get at least a half cap, if not full on Kappa. So already we're seeing a different response. We're already seeing a different response here by 42, getting the 3 caps right off the bat. And I think that's pretty solid for them so far. Let's see what's going on over here now. The Commando Tolson providing early warning for his Locust. And we don't have a light response on Kappa, but we do have what looks to be a back cap culminating here on Sigma. We have the Locust, Case Block. These Locusts doing a lot of work, heading back into that Sigma region.
And Theta's flipped as well. 42 is very passive. They're very far back right now, and it just seems like they're conceding a lot of these caps too easily in my mind. Theta is something they should have had angles on.
That I fully agree with that. That's a shame. They had Theta. It was only a slight cap, but they gave it up.
Yeah,
we have a movement now up the right side, though.
To prevent Theta. They're moving on the right side, so they're kind of moving up to the same side right now that Phoenix Legion is on. But Phoenix Legion is back capping Sigma at this point with that Locust. Now that 42 has moved up, they can't stop the Sigma cap either. Looks like they're just going to be aggressive. They're pushing right on in here.
Yep. So they're going to try and get the job done here with this heavy movement up the right side. Since there's not a lot of LRMs in play, they don't have to worry about the open air up top, and they were able to kind of power position move up to the front.
This Rifleman turns to his right. There's mechs right next to him. There he goes. Hits that Hunchback hard. But there's the Annihilator as well, hitting the Rifleman.
He just dropped off that terrain, too, so he wasn't able to immediately back out. Had to take a sharp turn and ran into that K2. But they're both hiding behind the same place there. Looks like that airstrike might have
Hunchback as well. They need to make sure they're coordinating their peaks here a little bit better.
They got Annihilator up there right side. If they're able to take out this Annihilator, that's going to be pretty big for them. There are some machine guns in play, so if they can soften him up, they have him center torso. Those machine guns could start tearing him to shreds. But he's pressing that Annihilator up against cover and using that Hunchback to try and...
And looks like maybe an airstrike coming in on the other side of this pillar to see if that gets some damage in on the Hunchback.
Another strike coming in, I believe, from the Annihilator as well. There's 4 mechs stacked up there. This could be pretty bloody. Looks like they got some really good hits on that Annihilator.
That K2's trying to get those machine guns to work, but he's taking a lot of damage from that Annihilator when he does it.
Tolson gets taken down in that commando.
Yep, that's another.
Especially with 4 caps ticking. If they can wrap this up quick, they might be able to handle it, but they need to start getting some of these kills. The Locust, Captain Salty, getting chased now by the other Locust. He's trying to retreat, but he's being paced by that 1E.
And the Annihilator finally goes down. That catapult with his machine guns finally took him down, but he stayed alive for a long time.
I think aggression is going to be the name of the game here. They don't have time to wait, but the Rifleman gets taken down. They're going to have to do this purely through just pressure now, though, especially being down a light. And they've got Javelin coming in the back.
And Captain Salty goes down in the Locust. I think that this is over. Phoenix Legion has the light mechs. They have the caps. It doesn't really matter how aggressive they are right now. Once again, 42 stalled out on their push.
Absolutely. And yeah, the 4 cap ticking and being down max. I think that one's pretty much going to seal the deal.
About to be a 5 cap. Kappa's getting back capped as well.
That, once again, early decisions here, early mistakes, I think, costing them. They could have gone for kind of the long game here, but losing Theta, ultimately the push that they called, I think, had to happen. Because they lost Theta.
Faster.
But they lost Theta. I think they had to push, but yes, it had to happen faster. But I don't think the push had to happen at all because they shouldn't have lost Theta. I think that was huge that they lost Theta. You know, they had the early cap. It was only a sliver, but they had mechs on deck. It's not like it got immediately flipped back. They should have had the angles they needed and the strikes they needed to lock that down. And because they lost Theta, they were forced into an aggressive maneuver against a team that was ready to receive them. And they, you know,
and even still with that aggressive maneuver, I think they needed to be more aggressive. They were like peeking one at a time from around corners, kind of engaging. They had the numbers advantage in that initial fight against the Annihilator and the Hunchback. They had the numbers, but instead they took one at a time peeking, and that's like playing whack-a-mole.
Not only that, but if the Annihilator on the other side is using PPCs, what does he even have left to fight you with? You know?
Yeah.
Well, I guess he had. No, this was the AC-10 Annihilator. It wasn't the PPC Annihilator, but so he could have
still. It's a numbers advantage. You've got to be aggressive. You've got to know that you're fighting 2 mechs with 3, and you are on a race against time at that point.
Yeah.
So I just feel like the aggression hasn't been there for 42. Like you said, the big mistake right at the beginning, giving up Theta, and it cost them once again. They're gonna fall.
Yeah. Once they had that Annihilator open center torso, I personally expected to see a really hard right side push to just wipe him off the face of the planet. They did have the Hunchback behind him, and he did press up against the pillar to keep himself from getting picked off, which was a great play by that Phoenix Legion Annihilator to slow the enemy down, and that Hunchback able to provide that over-the-top support, slowing down the push. I still think, though, they should have gotten around the corner and finished those 2 mechs off with some pretty solid aggression there. But, you know, with a lot of their PPC mechs, they can't do that because under a certain distance, the PPCs become negated.
Yeah, and like I said, to me, losing Theta is the first big mistake, and then not being aggressive enough when the situation calls for it. It just feels like when both of those matches, 42 got themselves in a situation that needed aggression, and they wound up doing this like slow peak at close ranges. I mean, they were right on top of each other twice in 2 situations, but they're taking turns one at a time, peeking out from behind corners and things. You've got the numbers. You need to be aggressive. You have to go, and you have to go all together. And that's a situation where instead of your cover, your defense being the corners that you're peeking around, it has to be all of your mechs presenting themselves at the same time. You're essentially sharing armor by just overwhelming them with firepower and with too many options to shoot and focus on. And I just didn't get that from 42 in either of those matches. And I think doing that would have at least given them a shot. Even after the mistakes they made, like with Theta, it would have given them a chance. When they started just trading from around corners at 100 meters, the game's over.